tight fingers.
Hey everybody, we're back for a nice week 4. Pretty chilly here, wouldn't you say there, Jim? Obviously here with Jim Hammond, our sports analyst, and has written some great articles for us on our site. You guys should check those out. But before we get into that, let's get into what we saw here from week 3, which had some good showdowns, a couple undefeated showdowns. And Jim, let's start us off here with Cambria Heights and Bishop Guilfoyle. The final score was 17 by Guilfoyle, 7 by Heights.
Yeah, Dan, that was a big game for both sides because it was kind of that week 3. It's kind of in high school season you have 10 games, so it's that pivotal matchup. Do you go to 2-1, 1-2, 0-3, 3-0? It's kind of sets you up for success further down the line. Guilfoyle was able to get that win at home, and again we've talked about him all year. It's the spectacular play of the sophomore quarterback Brandon Chadburn. He was able to throw for 2 touchdowns, 113 yards. Heights, we've talked about how they're such a physical team. They were able to slow him down a bit on the running game, but then the senior Cody Rossman steps up and able to provide Guilfoyle with some running offense. So they didn't score a lot of points, and I think the big question going in that game was Heights was such a physical team, would Guilfoyle be up for the challenge on defense? And it looks like they were.
Yeah, Jim, a couple things really stuck out to me. Well, first was Heights playing 2 games in a week. I don't know, that was a headline in the Trib whenever about their article. But, I'm not really sure if you can put all of the blame of the loss on that. It seemed like Heights got out to a great start, early with the Barrett of Brawley touchdown right at the beginning, 45-yard touchdown pass. But what can you say about the second half? A team such as Heights, who, this is supposed to be their year, their breakout year. And we said for about week 1 with that loss to Richland, it was like, you can't really hang your head on that, losing to Richland because they're such a good team. But now, we said they know that they could stay on the field with a team like Richland. But, we just said it last week. This game against Guilfoyle was a must-win for Heights. And as good as they have been playing, throughout this year, that a loss like that, I would have to say that's a step backwards.
It's definitely a step backwards. I think many people thought they would lose to Richland, but come back strong. And that's not to say they can't still get to 5, 6, 7 wins here. They're coming up with Central Cambria this week. Central Cambria is obviously having a down year, so Heights should be able to flex their muscles that week and get a win. But I think we just have to. We're going to be talking about Guilfoyle later in the show with their game this week. And, I'm just really impressed with how they're playing. This is a second-year coach, sophomore quarterback, and it just looks like they have a good group and a young group that's going to be a core for the next couple seasons. So it's, 2 interesting teams. 2 teams we're not counting into the playoffs, but 2 teams that are definitely on the playoff radar.
Yeah, Jim, you said it. These are guys that are, sort of flying under the radar more or less. It's interesting to see, though, every week how it's tough to find consistency. Like a Guilfoyle, though, the consistency, though, was made bouncing back against or after that Richland loss, beating Heights. Heights, we see more inconsistency. So it's going to be interesting to see, coming down here in the stretch when things start getting pretty chilly around October and November, how are they going to be able to put it all together? So that remains to be seen. And, Jim, like you said, we'll be talking about that later.
That'll bring us into our next game of the week. We're staying in the Laurel Highlands. We're going to be talking about the big Bishop McCourt-Somerset game. Somerset's big win over a team that they don't care for too much in Bishop McCourt. It was their first win ever. The series dates back to about the 80s. They've played about 25 times, and that was number 1 for Somerset in the win column.
Yeah, first you obviously have to start out with Tanner Stahl. I mean, what more can you say about him? Just pretty much lit it up on offense. We talked to a few Bishop McCourt players after the game, and they said you couldn't bring him down the first time, and that's pretty. When you're playing a player such as with that sort of caliber, ability to change the game on any single play, that is obviously tough to go up against. He finished 5 of 13. 107 yards, and he also added 115 yards rushing on 24 carries. Also ran for 2 scores and passed for a touchdown.
Yeah, the thing with Stahl is, Somerset, they like to run that spread option, and the one play they run is that read option where the quarterback almost runs with the running back for a couple yards, and he dictates who gets to keep the ball. And that's a tough play for any defense to make, let alone a high school defense. So obviously that had McCourt a little rattled there. I think McCourt stuck in there well down on the road in a tough environment. Somerset had a huge crowd on hand. And it was a 19-13 game, I believe. Bishop McCourt, they had 7 points for the longest time. Then that fourth quarter, that urgency came in, and Zane Tomkowski, he played like a senior quarterback. He found Spangler and DeFrancesco. I think they had a 3-play drive to bring it to a 1-touchdown game. And that McCourt defense we talked about coming up with that big stop, forcing Somerset into a field goal they missed. So McCourt had their chance at the end, and it's just we've been 2 straight weeks McCourt's struggling on offense. There's no question about it. They need to find they're getting yards up until about the 20 and 10. They're just not able to punch it in. So they're going to need to find a way to score some points, and a good remedy for that. You don't want to at the cost of another team, but they're playing Bedford this week, so you're going to look for McCourt to maybe right some things on offense, because they have a big game with Richland looming in 2 weeks. Yeah,
Jim, we'll stay with the Crushers here, and talking about Zane Tomkowski, the quarterback senior, you never want to talk bad on the kid, and, I'd never want to do that. I talked about him, me personally, about last week against Forest Hills, and he, sort of had trouble with the pressure in his face and everything like that. But like you said, though, he's been able to drive them down the field. It's the fact of, punching it in the red zone, and, you got to really, it seems like every play, it seems like that's what Tomkowski is struggling with to keep, to bring it all on every single play. Obviously, the blame could be thrown everywhere. The quarterback should not be blamed for everything, but it should be interesting to see how specifically Tomkowski rebounds after having a costly turnover in the first quarter against Somerset when the Crushers were already up 7-0. They lost a fumble at Somerset 25 to go up 14-0, and then obviously at the end of the game, but things were kind of desperate at that point. So it's been interesting to see the development of the Bishop McCourt offense. A player such as Spangler, a very versatile player. Then you also have your Wyatt Jackson. Yeah, and you also have kids like Tyler Rugg. So there's definitely weapons in there. And then as we said before, Dustin Belsky will be back in action here shortly. So, I think that with the Belsky element, he's such a physical, hard-nosed player. On the offensive side of the ball, that's going to add an extra dimension to the offense.
Going back to Somerset, and just what a transformation this team is going through, this program is going through. From 2010 to being winless to last year, they got 3 wins, but they played the conference elite. They played Richland tough. They played Johnstown tough. That one hurdle they wanted to get over was Bishop McCourt. McCourt beat them 45-7, 42-7 last year. And it had to be on their minds. Tanner Stahl came in last year, and he was given the job at quarterback due to an injury by a senior. So, once he gave him the ball, he never looked back. And, he's just growing into being such a good player, an elite player in this conference. And, Somerset, they have really no excuses to ever have a real down program. They're such a big school. You would just expect them to be good at football, and it's good to finally see them be a football team. They're so well known for that baseball. We've covered their baseball team. They've had some good runs in basketball, but for a big school playing a lot of AA teams, Somerset should do better at football, and it's looking like Coach has them on the right track now.
Yeah, Jim, you're talking about Somerset's coach Bob Landis, coming here in the past few years, and like you said, obviously just able to really change the tide, and we've seen articles all over the internet about the Somerset Pride, Somerset Eagles football pride is back in town, and things of that nature. So that's what it starts with. You have a few more talented players like a Tanner Stahl, and things could really change. This is sort of a program building, a program, should I say, putting it on the map. Like, Somerset really hasn't been around like the playoffs at all lately. So, this could be a real big thing for the program overall.
Yeah, and just to touch on one more point, saying it's a program-changing win, it's that first time beating Bishop McCourt, which has been so good over, the past few decades here, and more specifically the 2000s. And you saw Richland in 2007. They were finally able to get over that McCourt hump, and ever since then with Coach Bailey, they have a confidence now. It's not like, oh, we're going to McCourt, we're going to get killed. Now it's let's go beat McCourt. It's a different culture, and now Somerset knows they can beat them, and they're going to expect to beat them from now on. So, we'll leave you with that on that game, and we're going to move into our next game from last week.
Sounds good. Well, we will be covering right now a team that Somerset could be facing here in the playoffs with the District 9 AAA Clearfield. They hosted Central Martinsburg this week, and both teams were 2-0. Clearfield came out on top 34-33. Folks, we were at this game. We were not able to bring it to you live because of a plethora of technical difficulties, but boy, was it ever a game.
Yeah, Dan, and we were able to witness the game, and we saw some of the athletes both these teams have. You looked at the teams, and they were very similar styled teams. They relied a lot on their quarterback and their playmaking ability. That's Lezer for Clearfield. He was all over the field, and Austin Cunningham, the junior for Central, I think he did just about everything he could possibly do to win that game.
Yeah.
So, the game was sloppy, real sloppy game. I think, it started from Clearfield fumbling the opening kickoff. They traded fumbles. They threw interceptions. There had to have been 6 or 7 turnovers in that first half alone.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until the third quarter where things started to really pick up, and we're talking 50-yard touchdown, traded back to another 50-yard, 60-yard touchdown. They were going back and forth, and it was just a real offensive showdown. Clearfield, we're not going to talk too much about them. They're District 9. They could play Johnstown or Somerset or Bellefonte, one of our local teams.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at Central and knowing the other AA teams that are out there, they're definitely one of the top 2 or 3 competitors in the whole district.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. And a thing that really came to my mind right when the teams came out was, we saw Tyrone, who was a AA, a perennial power in AA. But this Central Martinsburg team, they're a big team. I mean, their line, they look like they're the AA part. They don't look like, last week we saw Bishop McCourt and Forest Hills, and they were a little on the small side, compared to how they've been in the past. But, this Central Martinsburg team is definitely, a physical team, and they're definitely well built, obviously led by Cunningham. Really, you can't say enough, though, about that Cunningham-Moore combination. Moore was in the Wildcat a few times during the game, threw some touchdown passes to Cunningham, usually the quarterbacks. I mean, this Central team's got it all. Even with that 1-point loss, they've, I think, they didn't really take a step back this week, that's for sure.
No, Clearfield's a good team, and I think Central is a really good defensive team. They're not going to see a lot of teams like Clearfield. Clearfield can do a lot of different things. They have 5 wide. They have different guys, different formations. Shout out to their coach, Tim Janoko from Clearfield, because he really has that team playing well, and he always has. And, just his scheming, you can tell he's a great coach, and those kids are coached up well. So, Central's not going to see an offense like that too often. So, they're going to be in it with the end. I think Penn Cambria, Richland, Central, they're all comparable teams. They all have offensive firepower. They all can, make some stops, get some key players in there to make plays. So, seeing Central, I'm very impressed with what they have, and I think that we could be talking about them in November.
So, all right, fans. Well, we will go then to our next game here in the week 2 or week 3 review here. We have Blairsville at Ligonier, which that ended up pretty lopsided, 49-15. Even though it was only 28-15, Ligonier in the third quarter. But we saw that Ryan Torrance really come alive with 4 touchdowns and over 200 yards rushing. So. Jim, I know that you've sang his praises before, so.
Yeah, Ryan Torrance has just been, an outstanding player early on in the season, and he's definitely one of the players to watch out for in the district. We might be talking about him a little bit later in the show. Ligonier, the key to winning that game was to stop the sophomore quarterback from Blairsville and Scott Thompson. And what we saw is Thompson was able to throw the ball, but as a dual threat quarterback, Ligonier really had him bottled up. I've seen Ligonier in the past against a system like that, Penn's Manor. they really know how to. If you have one player to key on, Ligonier's defense can stop you. They play in a single A conference. Sometimes they're not battle tested in the playoffs, but they have size, they have running backs, and they have a little bit of a passing game this year. So I think Ligonier can have a better showing in the district playoffs this year.
Yeah, Jim, and just like you just touched on the passing game, how that's going to be really crucial because obviously when it comes to playoff times, these Penn Cambrias, Richlands, Centrals, whoever they may be playing in the playoffs, they will obviously be keying on Torrance without a doubt. And, that's going to be interesting to see how Coach Roger Beidel kind of schemes his way around, obviously relying heavily on the rushing attack, but also inserting the passing plays in there, at crucial times and, whenever time calls for it.
Absolutely. And the thing with Ligonier is, at the end of the regular season, they're going to be 9-1, 8-2, 10-0. So they get that first playoff game at home, and they need to find a way to defend their home field. I've seen them in the past. I've witnessed Central Martinsburg back in 2008, 2009. They went in there and they took care of Ligonier, and it's happened the past couple seasons. Ligonier, they're close to winning a playoff game. Coach Beidel's been working hard with that team, and I think Torrance is that guy they can ride to maybe a playoff win or two, and they make things interesting for themselves.
Yeah, you're right. To see a guy like Torrance, who, he's been in those playoff games in the past whenever they have got beaten really bad. So, I think that's just all the more motivation for a Ligonier team. I hope the best for them as well. To have a successful season and into the playoffs as well.
Absolutely, and we're gonna close out our Week 3 recap with the interesting game, the national headline game, the Ampipe Walnut Heights game, otherwise known as the Westmont Johnstown game. City rivalry. These teams have gotten each other in the past. Westmont's won some games they shouldn't have. Johnstown's won some surprising games. So it's since Johnstown's come back to Laurel Highlands, it's actually been a really even series, a really good game to watch. We saw Westmont; they jumped out to a big lead. Johnstown was able to weather the storm, stand tall, and they were able to score some points and use their athletes and hold off a feisty Westmont group.
Yeah, Jim, this is all the headlines aside. When we get down to the X's and O's of the game, it was really interesting to see how both of these teams, really looked very similar. Quarterbacks inexperienced, or at least on the Westmont side, they don't have the type of offense that allows for a 4 wide receivers down the field attack. But they're both of their total rushing yards during this game improved by over 100 yards. So it was interesting to see trying to find playmakers like we were talking about last week. Like the Terrell Jones, he's come out big. He had 24 rushes for 140 yards for Johnstown. And, Westmont, I'm sorry, they forced some turnovers on Johnstown. So, little things like that, you're seeing improvements here week in and week out. And, that's a good thing you have to say overall.
Yeah, we've talked about Westmont with the coaching change. Pat Barron, he's 0-3, but, it's going to take time for him to get everything in place. And, finally it looked like Westmont had an identity, had an idea of what they wanted to do. You can't say enough about Sam Curry, the running back. I mean, he had a great game. They were riding him the whole way. You couldn't have asked for anything more than, of course, Liam Moran, the quarterback, ran in there for 2 touchdowns. And you could see, got to see some of the film, and those teams Westmont was fired up. They were into the game. It was an exciting game. But, looking at Johnstown, we're starting to see, what kind of team they're going to be. For the past couple years, they've had, even in the past, we're going to go back a little bit further, they had their go-to guy, Lerod Stevens-Howling or Antoine Reed. They had that go-to running back. Then they got away from that and went to the spread, 5 wide, just let's run and gun it and see what happens. This year, they don't have the quarterback to do it, and they don't have the one running back to ride, so they have about 4 or 5 guys are going to touch the ball, try to get them out in space. Dion Moore, he's getting more and more snaps at quarterback, and he's doing very well. And you watch him run. I don't know if there's a shiftier runner in the whole district than him.
Mm-hmm.
He can juke out anyone. And Javon Braxton, Kareem Gibson, Terrell Jackson. You look at the 4 of those guys with Moore including, they're all underclassmen. So Johnstown's building for the future, but they're going to be still competitive this season.
Yeah, Jim, those are great points. But if there was one thing that I'd have to critique, is say if I was a coach, for either team, it is the ability to get to the quarterback, and it is the ability to force turnovers. Like I said, Johnstown forced 2 in the game. Those were, I think, they're only the 2 out of the 3 that they had in the whole season. Johnstown, I'm sorry, on the other hand, didn't force any. Things like that coming down the road, you have to find your guys on defense, though, that can do the job. We're obviously seeing these playmakers coming out on offense, but we know, to win games, to win close games, a lot of times that comes down to getting pressure on the quarterback and to force turnovers.
Absolutely, and to build on what you're saying about getting pressure on the defense and all that, we're looking at the 2 teams who they're going to play next week. Johnstown plays at Richland. We're going to talk about that game later in the show, but Westmont, they'll be playing a Saturday afternoon game against the Somerset team. And Westmont coming off of their best performance out of the 3 games they've played this year. Somerset coming off an all-time high victory. They're up in the clouds. So that's a good opportunity for Westmont, because Saturday afternoon games, it's not Friday nights. And, sometimes that's an advantage for Westmont. They can catch you sleeping on, the lazy Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's going to be a game to keep an eye on. And Westmont just needs to find a way to score more points, get into the end zone, make less turnovers, make less mistakes, keep the clock moving, and keep the ball out of Tanner Stahl's hands. So, we're going to talk about Johnstown a little bit later, and that's going to wrap up our recap for last week, and we're going to move into the rankings section of our podcast, so stay tuned.
All right, guys, so before we get into it, we want to give a little shout-out to our sponsors, and we have a little new thing on our site. If you're watching this on our site or listening to this on our site right now, you can look in the top left corner, and you'll see a sponsors page. If you click on that, you can see, just a quick letter to you guys, and also our sponsors are on there with directions to their restaurant or place of business, and also their homepage. So that's a great thing to check out, and to support these people who are kind enough to be able to bring this stuff to you guys. So Jim, I guess next segment here is power rankings. These are always fun to do because we agree on a lot of them, but then when we get to the top, it's always a little bit different. So here we go here with our Week 4 power rankings, folks. These are the official D6 Sports Network power rankings. And Jim, I'll be kind enough to let you start off with, we'll go single A first.
Going single A first, I have the same 5 teams, a little jumbled order. Going from last week, I had Penns Manor at 5 last week. This week, I'm going to drop Bishop McCourt down to 5. Mm-hmm. They're struggling on offense a little bit. I still think they're a good team. I still think they can get things together. And they have capabilities of winning 7-8 games this season. Number 4, I'm moving Penns Manor from 5 to 4. They had that week 1 upset to Northern Cambria, but it seems like they're going to be rolling up until that Ligonier game. Danny Farrens, he's going to carry that team as far as he can. Number 3 this week, I moved Northern Bedford from 4 to 3. They're one of those District 5 teams that can play spoiler to North Star and Berlin. They have that great passing game, good defense, good coaching. They're a strong team. Number 2, I'm moving Berlin up to number 2. Drew Glotfeltney is he's an awesome running back. Gives them such a good dynamic on offense. And sticking with number 1, and Bellwood Annis is going to stay there. Casey Gray, just a great player. They're going to be a tough team to stop, and I think they're going to win the district as of right now.
Interesting. I only have one pick, though, that matched with yours. It's different from last week. I'm very partial to strength of schedule, so I'm going to put Northern Bedford at number 5. Yeah, they've been cruising through their first 3 games. Over at quarterback has really fit in well. Yeah, and then, obviously with the Pressel brothers as well. So, they're definitely a solid pick there at number 5. At 4, I'm dropping down Berlin a little bit just because, strength of schedule is always something to be concerned about, like I just said. And I just don't know if Glodfelty is going to be able to get it done whenever they're facing, these Bellwood Annises and, McCourt's and Penn's Manor. So that brings me to number 3. I had McCourt at number 1 last week. I switched the rankings up from Bellwood and McCourt. Obviously, that McCourt, my alma mater, let me down a little bit, losing to Somerset. Hard fought game, but I think if once Belsky gets back and helps Tom Kalski get on track on offense, then you have the added playmakers with Spangler and Jackson. McCourt's obviously going to be a team right there in the hunch for District 6 Class A championship this year. And then number 2, actually, I moved Penn's Manor way up. I don't even know if I had them on my last top 5, but when you have a kid like Danny Ferrens and a guy that's so elusive, such as like a Tanner Stahl from Somerset, McCourt saw all that they could have Stahl. And we saw what Penn's Manor and Danny Ferrens did last year against Bellwood Annis. So I really think that Penn's Manor deserves to be in the number 2 spot there. So then from there, Bellwood Annis, Jim, like you said, really not a lot of negatives about Bellwood. Yeah, and you have guys like Casey Gray and Worthing who seem to be putting that offense together week in and week out. So they're definitely my number 1 pick for single A. So that brings us to double A.
Yeah, and actually a quick plug here for myself. I started this week doing a statewide rankings, not just power rankings for our local teams. It features the whole state. You can see it on our website, the d6sportsnetwork.com. So give that a look. Definitely gives you an idea of what your team might see outside of the district. But sticking with what we're doing right here is our power rankings for double A here in the district, and mine remain exactly the same. I have Forest Hills at 5. I like what they can do running the ball and throwing the ball. They're going to be a tough team to stop. Sticking Ligonier at 4. I'm a big fan of Ryan Torrance. I think Ligonier can make some noise in the playoffs this year finally. Number 3, despite the loss, I'm going to stick Central right there. Brady Moore is just a great running back, and Austin Cunningham is just such a versatile athlete out of the backfield as quarterback. Number 2, the tough, hard-nosed defense of Penn Cambria. And number 1, the powerful offense of the Richland Rams.
All right, Jim. I'll go with number 5, Ligonier. Still not sold. Maybe a little strength of schedule issues, especially when you're playing in Double A playoffs. And I'm still not sold on their passing game. 4, Bald Eagle, just to the fact that this could be a big year if they're coming in 3-0 already this season. So the sky's the limit for them as far as the Mountain Conference goes. Even though they still have a Central Martinsburg team that'll be tough to compete against. So then, go to 3, Central. Seeing all the playmaking abilities of Central really makes me want to put them up in the top 2, if not number 1. But, we still haven't seen Penn Cambria or Richland really relinquish anything as far as the top 2 rankings go. So, I got to stick strong with number 2, Richland. And, they're making every effort to be in first in my book. But Penn Cambria, and with Coach Fetzer's, expertise and sort of way that he's changed the program at Penn Cambria, is keeping me number 1.
And that'll bring us up to our next segment. We introduced it last week. We're going to stick with it. It is our what you would call our Heisman ratings. We're going to take 3 players, 3 guys we think are in that running for Player of the Year. This week, I'm going to bring in number 3, Ryan Torrance. He's a new guy on my list. He has 458 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns, 9 yards a carry, and 152 yards a game. He's really that key cog in the Ligonier offense, and 10 touchdowns early on in the season is a pretty impressive stat. Almost like, I hate to say it, but also in my 3 spot, I have a kind of a tie. Drew Glotfeltney from Berlin. He was my number 1 last week. But, I want to keep him in the list. I don't want to throw him out of the list just yet. 539 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns, 180 yards a game, and 2 interceptions, keeping it versatile. Number 2 for me is Kyle Flick of Richland, the wide receiver. 20 catches, 417 yards, 7 touchdowns. That's 20 yards every time he touches the ball. And he is just, he opens up that Richland offense that has been so great. And my new number 1 is Austin Cunningham, Central Martinsburg. And what can you can't even describe how good this kid is. Having seen him live, he has 365 yards through the air with 4 touchdowns. And he also has 200 rushing yards for 5 touchdowns. And you saw last week they lined him up at receiver, and what did he do? 2 catches, 149 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He also has an interception on defense. To have that kind of ability, throwing the ball, rushing the ball, and the ability to catch it, he's just a tremendous athlete, and it's hard for anyone's numbers to compete with those.
All right, Jim. Well, I'm going to start off at number 3. Last week I had Gladfeldy from Berlin. This week, just, these Heisman rankings are a lot of it is based on strength of schedule, at least as far as I'm concerned. So, number 3, Tanner Stahl, I'm going to have from Somerset. He did everything against Bishop McCourt. First ever win as well. He was 16 for 14, 128 passing. Then he rushed for 121 and 2 touchdowns. So, a kid like that, it was so, obviously these Torrances and, these Gladfelties are so vital to their teams on the ground. But Tanner Stahl really brings that double dimension that I'm looking for in a Heisman Trophy winner. And then for number 2, I'm going to stay with Matt Schaefer of Richland, quarterback. He was 11 to 13 last week, 4 touchdowns, 164 quarterback rating. You can't do much better than 11 for 13 passing, first of all. And a lot of other things that come to mind for me with Schaefer is his ability to battle through a quarterback battle. There's a lot of unknowns and inconsistencies, especially whenever you're battling for that spot, or even changing every possession or every quarter like they did the first week. So it's interesting to see that Schaefer has really been able to keep his head clear and just focus on the game and focus on executing. So then at number 1, Jim, we saw it last week, Austin Cunningham. You said it already, just the versatility is amazing. And one thing that I saw in the stats is he's actually the second leading tackler also on the team with 20 tackles. So, a big shout out to Austin Cunningham, Central Martinsburg. It's definitely a huge accomplishment. Definitely a team poised to make a name for themselves in the playoffs. All right, well, let's get down to what we're all looking forward to here this week. A lot of games, a lot of results that we're really not too sure about, especially with the caliber of teams that are playing. So the first game we're going to be looking at here is a rivalry, an out-of-conference matchup. We have Chestnut Ridge playing Bald Eagle.
Yeah, and that might be a conference rivalry down the line. Chestnut Ridge is, of course, the only independent team in our coverage area, and they're looking to join a conference, and the Mountain Conference might be their fit. They're going to be voting on that very soon, so we'll see what happens there. But until then, it is a non-conference game. Chestnut Ridge is 1-2. They were playing this, statewide schedule. They're playing some teams from Maryland. They're all over the place. They started the year 1-2, tough loss. They got beat pretty hard by Central and Berks Catholic, but they were able to beat a Pittsburgh City school in Carrick. So, a little mixed bag from Chestnut Ridge. They're coming off a playoff season. We haven't talked about them yet, but the guy they're gonna hand the ball to most is a quarterback, Bo Bosch. He's a dual threat, a big 6'5" kid. He makes everything run for Chestnut Ridge. So we really don't know what to expect out of Bald Eagle because we didn't expect them to be this good. Mm-hmm. A 3-0 start. Dan's been ranking them in his power rankings, and they're playing well right now. So we're gonna see what they're all about too. Cole Long is the quarterback. So it's gonna be an interesting game to see what happens here.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of statistics on them because they haven't uploaded their ranking or their stats to Max Preps. But what we do know is that they are a team that's in the Mountain League. We know the Mountain League's, very, very respectable, hard-nosed teams that play up there. So, I think they're going to Bald Eagle is going to be bringing Chestnut Ridge everything they can handle. Jim, we were talking about Bald Eagle, they're 3-0. They still have big games. They still have Central Martinsburg to play. Still have a big game with Tyrone as well. So, this is a huge game here for Bald Eagle. a stepping stone game, but it's even more than that. It's a make or break game, I would say, because you don't want to be going into Central and Tyrone with a loss on your belt, especially to a team like Chestnut Ridge who you think you would be able to beat.
Yeah, it's big in the standings for Bald Eagle to beat a double-A team. That gives you more points than beating a single-A team. So, Bald Eagle's going to try to, win the games they can and get the points they can to, maybe sneak into the playoffs. 3-0, great start for them. 4-0 would be tremendous. Central, like you said, Central, Tyrone, games looming for them. So, it's only gonna get more difficult for this team.
Mm-hmm.
Chestnut Ridge, they're playing in District 5. What they're going to do, they're going to have a one-game playoff to see who goes on playing sub-regionals with District 8, District 9. It's all jumbled up. So, no one's really taking charge there. You have Bedford and Everett who have yet to win a game. Chestnut Ridge is actually leading their district, believe it or not, only 3 schools. So, Chestnut Ridge needs to get some wins under the belt and secure one of those, two, and to secure themselves in that District 5 championship play-in game, if you will. So, it's a big game for both squads. To make a pick, I'm going to go with Bald Eagle. Dan's been picking them. He's a big fan of what they're doing right now. He got a good chuckle out of that, but they're, to go 4-0 would be big for them, especially with Central and Tyrone up on deck.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Bald Eagle too. It seems like
surprise.
It seems like they're a solid team, though. It seems like it's a team that doesn't get too high, doesn't get too down. They've been going through their games, pretty methodically. Obviously not mistake free, but they still seem to be improving every week. I like quarterback Cole Long, and I think they're going to take this. I think high 20s that they'll have to something like 14 or 18 or 17 or 18 for Chestnut Ridge. But I think that Bald Eagles are going to pull it out, and this win's going to do wonders for their season if you're starting at 4-0.
Good call there, and that will bring us into our next game, and we're going to do a little LHAC action. 2-1 Bishop Guilfoyle travels up to Forest Hills, another 2-1 squad. One team we thought would be a good team, and another team we weren't sure about. So, coming in this game, we have Bishop Guilfoyle, the surprise team. We have Forest Hills, the traditional power. So, it might not have been a game you were looking at early on in the season, but it's definitely a game you're looking at now.
Yeah, you really can't say enough, Jim, like you said, with Chadburn and Irwin and, Rossman and all their other guys. But Forest Hills has got some weapons. We saw Donahue, just as a sophomore and how well he played in that Bishop McCourt game. He threw some interceptions, but he stayed in it, was able to make plays, out of the pocket and stuff. But a really big thing that he has is he has 2 weapons at the wide receiver position. He has Sneddon and he has Shope. That alone, not discounting the running of Dell, he's going to be able to, I think, be able to make some plays on this BG defense. So we saw what happened against Richland, and obviously Richland's the upper echelon of the LHAC, but I think Forest Hills is going to be able to make some plays.
Absolutely, and we're talking about Chadburn, the sensational sophomore quarterback for Guilfoyle, and looking at the conference, just a little side note, there's so many underclassmen quarterbacks this year, so which is only going to make the league a lot stronger next year. But the other sensational sophomore quarterback is Joe Donahue. We got a first-hand look at this kid, and I think he's going to be special. His ability to escape pressure, keep his head downfield for a sophomore is astounding. And he has those, like you said, the great targets in Sneddon and Shope and Dell out of the backfield. This team has a lot of weapons in Forest Hills. They're not as deep as they've always been, but their starting run is it's as good as always. And this is just a very interesting game. Guilfoyle, we thought last week they'd have trouble with the physicalness of Cambria Heights, and they were able to hold that team to 7 points, keep them off the board. So this is another dynamic physical team they're going to play. So it's going to be interesting to see how Guilfoyle stands up on defense and how Chadburn is going to be able to dictate the game when they have the ball.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Especially, like I said, I was talking about how BG really kind of failed against Richland, but to come out and to really handle a Cambria Heights team, only hold them to 7 points is remarkable. But not only that, but it seemed like BG offense really kind of grew in the second half of that last game against the Highlanders. And, time will tell, obviously, if Chadburn has it all together, if he can get the ball to Irwin, especially against the Forest Hill secondary, who definitely has some weapons. And, Jim, we were talking earlier, and like you said about Blau, Sharif Blau for Forest Hills, another added playmaker into this game. Maybe if you want to talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, Sharif Blau is just a sophomore, and typically at Forest Hills you don't get moved up as a freshman, and Blau was moved up last year to get him a little acclaim to the the varsity playing style. So we think he's going to be a special player. We thought he would play a little bit more this season. Obviously, with Dell and the great receivers, he's not able to get on the field as much. But in special teams, he made an impact against Bishop Carroll last week. So, he's a guy to keep an eye on. Maybe they're going to try to work him into the offensive rotation a little bit. So it's just another weapon Forest Hills has. And if they could beat you in offense and special teams, we don't even have to talk about the defense. They've only given up 10 points this year. That's just the calling card of Don Bailey.
Wow. Yeah, that's going to be huge to see. That's definitely going to be one of the matchups to look at, the Forest Hills D versus the BGO. It should be definitely an interesting game, especially up at Forest Hills when, a lot of teams like Guilford, used to playing on turf, Richland on turf. They had their home games on turf. Going into Sidman, and who knows? We're getting into late September, what the weather could be up there. So it's always a surprise. Granted, they have a great grass field up at Forest Hills, but that definitely plays a key in the game, I think, as well.
To make a pick, I'm gonna stick. I made the pick earlier in the week on my picks, the LHAC forecast. You can always check them out on my blog and, of course, the D6 Sports Network. I'm going to stick with Forest Hills. I had that game going 27-16. So it's a game where I think BG can make enough offensive plays to stick with it, but I think Forest Hills is one too many playmakers for BG defense to keep in check.
Yeah, Jim, I totally agree with you. We saw a Forest Hills team that had to go through a growing process with that loss to Bishop McCourt, but when you have added playmakers like Sneddon, who really came alive in that Bishop McCourt game, and Donahue, that's going to be hard to go against if you're a Bishop Guilfoyle team who, has had trouble at times on the defensive side of the ball. So we'll definitely see what we have in here for this week 4. But, we'll be giving you live score updates throughout the game. So, guys, just stick with us, and, we'll give you what you guys need.
We're going to stick with the LHAC, another game, and this will be the Richland-Johnstown game. Johnstown coming off a big win an emotional win over Westmont. Playing with all the right moves game, national headlines. And, what we saw out of Johnstown, we talked about them earlier, is, they're finding that identity on offense. They're not going to be that big spread attack. They're going to rely on that one guy. They have 4 or 5 guys that are going to try to get the ball in their hands, try to make plays. And I think it all starts with the quarterback, the shifty runner, and that's Dion Moore, the junior. Seeing him play, he's a very shifty, he's quick. And that Richland defense, we still don't know how good they are playing some weak offenses. We're going to see how good they can play against an athlete like Moore.
Yeah, Jim. Johnstown strikes me as a team. Granted, they're very, very young compared to like a Central Martinsburg team who they have a great quarterback. They have good running backs. Johnstown does have some great talent, as we already know, but they need to be able to find ways to exploit this Richland defense. This Richland defense in the past, yes, they have been soft, or they have been not as good as the offense, but this year they are sticking up to the task. But Johnstown, I think you can't just come into this game running what you've been running the whole season. You got to go. I would say even if you could take a shot at a wildcat and get the ball to your quarterback, maybe on some screens or whatnot. Even though they could be keying on your quarterback if he's set up as a wide receiver. But you gotta just find the way to get the ball in the hands of your playmakers this week for Johnstown. But I think the biggest key for Johnstown against the teams, a high quality team such as Richland, is to limit your turnovers. Turnovers played a big part in the Westmont game, and Johnstown's notorious for having those big turnovers late in the game, or when the game's on the line, sort of thing that really hurt them. But this team could grow a lot though from this game, even if they don't win this game against Richland. If you could keep it close, that could be huge stepping stones throughout the season.
Absolutely, looking at the past couple years, we've seen Johnstown win in a tight back and forth game last year. Last year's game was really weird. If you guys remember, Richland started doing this onside kick, so Johnstown started doing it, and they did it the whole game, back and forth to each other. It was just a really weird, strange game. So credit Bailey for trying something new, and credit Coach Pena for matching that. And so both teams, we've talked about Johnstown's offense and how they're getting better, and finding what they're gonna do. And we're talking about Richland's defense. We don't know what to expect. We know what to expect in the Richland offense, and that's a lot of points. They put up 62 points on Bedford last week. And they have that 2 quarterback shuffle. Pecora, Schaefer, both able to make plays. Solarchik's running the ball well. We've talked about Kyle Flick in our Heisman race. Luke Schertzler's another threat catching the ball. So Richland has this offense that it's as good as you're going to find just about anywhere. They could stack up with a lot of AA teams in the whole state offensively, and so Johnstown's key. They're coming off playing a team like Westmont. Westmont's running the wing T. They're not throwing the ball. And here you're going to go up to Hurlinger Field, up on Richland's turf, and Matt Schaefer's going to throw the ball 20 times. Pecora's going to probably throw it 5 or 10 times. And then they have Solarchik to run with it. It's just a completely different look than they had last week. Mm-hmm. And it's just, is Dalvin Williams and company, are they going to be ready for what's coming this way?
Yeah, that's really hard to tell. Jim, what's really has astounded me or really interested me was that, before the season, everybody was talking about John Rizzo, the absence of John Rizzo from Richland. But, since week 1, nobody has really said anything about that. They've been able to find playmakers all over the field and be able to put up, just a massive amount of points. So this Richland team, even though I haven't had them at number 2 in my AA rankings, they are definitely for real.
Yeah, and to touch on that, I have them number 10 in the whole state in my, in our D6 Sports Network rankings. I really believe in this team, and I had someone tell me today, what do you think? You think this team, I think they might be a year away. They're a little bit too young. Well, a lot of these kids played last year as sophomores, so the key offensive skill players are juniors. But they've been playing for a year, and even Kyle Flick, he's been playing since a freshman. So, this team is good, and it's scary to think what they're going to be next year.
Yeah, I agree. So, I guess if we get down to picks, previous years have been really close. 2009, Jim, like you have written here, 21-20. Then, 2010, 39-14, which was a lopsided game up at Hurlinger Field, and then 35-27 last year down in Trojan. So, these teams are always really fighting against each other, but, nothing makes me want to say that Johnstown's going to really keep it close, because I think Richland is just way too strong this year.
The way the Richland offense is running there right now, it's like a machine. It's unbelievable, and, I can't wait to get a chance to see it. We're definitely going to try to do a Richland game on our live broadcast this year. I picked, you can see on the D6 Sports Network, I picked Richland to win 45-21. I just really think Richland's going to be able to score 40 points consistently every game this season. Johnstown's going to have a tough time stopping them, but I think Dion Moore can get some points on the board. Maybe if a few bounces happen their way, they could pull off the upset, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, we're going to head back out to the Heritage Conference for another interesting matchup this week. We have both 2-1 teams. Northern Cambria versus Blairsville. Now, folks, this is a game that Blairsville's been a surprise team for us this year. They're a very young team, but Northern Cambria, that week 1 win against Pennsylvania, but then they lose the next week. So, against Homer Center. So it's definitely interesting to see, how Northern Cambria, are they really on track or not? Blairsville, we'll see if they can rebound after that tough loss to Ligonier. So,
looking at Northern Cambria, you had that great win in week 1 over Penns Manor. Then you have the letdown against Homer Center. Then last week they play United, and what we've seen from United early on in the season is they're, no offense, they're just not a very good team this year. They're having a down year. So it's Northern Cambria is going to need to focus again and play with that same intensity they played in week 1. We've talked about the community support they're having this year, the brand new field and all that, and putting a lot of money into their program, a lot of pride in their program. So they're going to need to play with that same passion, that same intensity, because looking into the season, we didn't pick Blairsville very high. We thought they had so many seniors going last year, but we've seen early on Scott Thompson, the quarterback, he can run, he can throw. He's like a Danny Ferens type player, so they can play. Playing Ligonier last week, that Ligonier is gonna be tough for anyone in that conference to beat. So I think you have Ligonier up here at the top, then anywhere. Blairsville, Northern Cambria, and Penns Manor are all teams that can still play some good football, and they're all single A teams, all playoff caliber teams. So it's going to be a good matchup, I would say.
Jim, a thing that stood out for me in that week 1 game against Penns Manor for Northern Cambria was their ability to make plays in crunch time. Multiple third down conversions, second half plays were even bigger on defense, especially. This is a team that knows how to play in a big game. Whereas, Blairsville, maybe they know how to play in a big game now after that Ligonier game, but I just see Northern Cambria being too good of a team. So, I'm not, just to make a real quick pick, I'm just gonna say, Northern Cambria 34, Blairsville 17.
Yeah, I'm looking for a score similar to that. I think Jeff Hogan, the quarterback, he's going to be hooking up with Adam Politis a lot. Politis is one of the better receivers, if not the best receiver in the Heritage Conference, and in the district. So I'm going to go with Northern Cambria as well. I think they're a good team this year. I'm really impressed with what they're doing. So I'm gonna give it to the Colts in this one.
That sounds good.
So we're gonna come back. Stay tuned for our last game, our game of the week, the game we will be covering on the D6 Sports Network Live. So stay tuned.
All right, guys, welcome back. And so this week we have the game of the week, Blacklick Valley at Windber. Both teams 3-0. We're really excited to bring this Westpac game to you guys. We're trying to cover all the conferences. We covered Mountain Conference, ICC, LHAC so far. So, really being up at historic Windber Stadium is, really a treat for us. And, Jim, if you want to start off on breaking it down.
We're going to talk a little bit about Blacklick Valley this year. They've had some down seasons the past 2 years, but they're going to rely on their main man, and that is Johnny Sheasley. He leads the team with 530 yards on the ground and 6 touchdowns. He is a tremendous athlete. He can do it all. And, Blacklick Valley is really going to rely on him to make that, make this big win over, to try to get a big win over Windber. Windber, they're coming off some, great seasons through the years. One of those programs in the Westpac and even the whole area. And that's just one of those programs about. And, they lost a lot from last year. Colin Bryan, the wonderful running back, he's walking on at Penn State. So, shout out to him, continuing the dream, playing football in college at a major university. And I'm sure Coach at Windber would really like to have him in this game.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. Like Blacklick, Jim, we were talking about, new lights this season at their stadium. Just kind of a spark to the season. They're 3-0 right now. But they are traveling to Windber Stadium. Windber, the historic team, and like you already talked about, the single win that they have this year, that they've really pretty much been able to run this to perfection through the Westpac standings. They have multiple playmakers on offense, so it's going to be a really tough game for Blacklick to come in and just win the game at Windber.
Absolutely, and talking about Windber, we've known through the years they've been this power running team. Colin Bryan had an awesome season last year, and they're still looking for that replacement. But they have plenty of guys that have stepped up and able to get a few yards here and there. They have 4 ball carriers this year, 4 running backs with 100 yards each. So, they don't have that one guy that they've always had, but they have a couple guys. Dan and Devin Tomlinson have been running well, Dustin Blau and Trevor Neri. So, they have 4 guys they're going to hand the ball off to, make plays, especially in that wing tee. You have, there's guys coming left and right, motion. It's a tough offense to defend. So, the more playmakers, the merrier for Wimber. Mm-hmm. And, the thing they haven't always had is a passing game. But, early on in the season, Dakota Geip, he has 350 passing yards. So it just opens up another element to that offense, we haven't always seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been able to watch a few Wimber games in the past 2 years. And it's, I've seen some old films of the single wing, but Wimber's really been able to sort of be innovative in that set, and been able to get their quarterback out wide and to get those receivers on those quick out routes or those downfield routes that have really been able to surprise some teams. And if Blacklick isn't ready, Wimber's going to be able to put up points pretty fast, in my opinion. Obviously, you got to look at both defenses. How are they going to be able to react to these decently high-powered offenses? So that's always a thing to look at as well.
Wimber's coming off a big 42-7 win over Rockwood. And looking at the quotes in the paper by Coach Matt Grohol, he wasn't entirely happy with how his team played. Mm-hmm. They relied a lot on big plays, big runs, They didn't have that sustaining drive he was really looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at their scores early on in the season, they beat a good team in Shade 20-6. Then they beat Myersdale pretty good. Then they beat Rockwood pretty good. So they haven't been tested yet. So we really don't know what Wimber really has.
Right.
They've lost so much, but with the tradition always can carry you through a lot of games.
Yeah, just to kind of talk about the tradition up there at Wimber, folks, we have a plethora of games on our website of old Wimber games, and you can really get the feel of being a Wimber Rambler. And we talked to some players that have played in the past, the past few years, and they still say Wimber football is the king in Wimber. So that's great to sort of see in Westpac, smaller communities, but Wimber is still strong, still has their tradition rich, and it should be a packed house definitely up at Wimber Stadium this year.
A thing you get to compare, it's unique early in the season that you have common opponents already. Looking at Wimber, they beat Myersdale 49-19 rather, and they beat Rockwood 42-7. Then you look at Blacklick Valley, they beat Rockwood 44-12 and Myersdale 42-7. So, similar scores,
Mm-hmm.
Same opponents, so you would have to think a game like this is a similarly matched game.
Yeah, you really do. There should be a great atmosphere up there. We were talking about last week Berlin Portage, how that was sort of the the deciding game and who's the top man in the Westpac. And obviously we haven't talked about North Star at all, but Blacklick Valley and Wimber have really come up kind of quietly and into kind of like the leading pack of the Westpac.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Blacklick Valley looking further down the schedule, after they go to Wimber, Township, at Portage, Ferndale, at Conemaugh Valley, and North Star, and at Salzburg to end the season. So you look at that game, you think about 4 winnable games, then, a couple toss-ups. Wimber, on the other hand, they got their easy games out of the way as well. They will host Ligonier Valley, a team we've talked about and we're very impressed with.
Mm-hmm.
With that Heritage Westpac agreement. So they have a game with them. They still have to play Berlin. They miss North Star on the schedule this year with the scheduling arrangement. So it's these teams. With the early season schedule on, they both raced out to these 3-0 records, and it's really a decisive game to see who can go to 4-0.
Absolutely. The Westpac is so tight this year. Anything could really go. And, we're really interested to see, who's going to take that step. Is it going to be Blacklick Valley coming into Wimber, or is it going to be Wimber defending their home territory?
So, with the great game, evenly matched opponents, we're going to have to pick a score here. And, that's going to be tough to do. But I'll lead things off. And I'm going to go with maybe an upset. I don't really know just yet, but I'm going to take Blacklick Valley. Johnny Sheasley is a tremendous athlete, and we haven't even talked about him yet. This is our 4th podcast. We haven't even said a word about the kid. Mm-hmm. He has been spectacular early on, and anything Blacklick Valley's going to do, it's going to go through him. And I just expect him to have a big game this weekend, so I'm going to take Blacklick Valley.
Yeah, Jim, I was leaning towards Blacklick Valley originally. I was just looking at like the stats for Wimber and whatnot, and I really think it's going to be a tough defensive matchup for Blacklick Valley. So I'm going to take Wimber winning. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, to be honest. Like we've said before, who knows about the weather, especially up at Wimber Stadium. You get that mountain breeze coming down and whatnot. So I think it's going to be a tight-scoring game. Maybe like low 20s for Wimber, high teens for Blacklick, but definitely expecting a good game.
Yeah, I always like whenever we pick differently, so makes things a little bit interesting on Friday night. So make sure you tune in Friday night, everyone.
All right, thanks, guys.